Dear colleagues, I'm making a video here to try and explain some of the context of the reason for why we're now facing 9 days of strike action at the university. As the current president of UMUCU, I feel I am responsible to try and inform you of some of the context of what's led to this situation at the moment. So we have a situation where colleagues may be deducted quite significant amounts of money for participation in the marking and assessment boycott. And this isn't a situation that any of us feel we can tolerate as a union. Now, many of you may be aware of some of the deals that have been reached by other institutions where they may have returned sometimes all of the deductions that have been made, largely to ensure that marking is done and done to a high quality. However, the union in the University of Manchester, we've pushed for negotiations and managed to engage in some negotiations with the employer. Rather unfortunately, when we began the industrial action, the employer drew back from quite a number of initiatives that we had jointly initiated, where we'd sought to work more collectively together. And the union was able to play its part much more proactively within the work environment. But in the current circumstances, we've been offered a deal which our members rejected of 33%, and that was the university's best offer by their estimates, not time limited, but 33% of overall income that had been withdrawn for the MAB or would be withdrawn would be returned, and 67% of that income would be lost by the employee. Now, we know from even conservative estimates that that is £1.5 to £2.5 million in withdrawn income from employees. And what the university is saying is it must retain that to illustrate the impact. And it's saying some people picked up marking and some students missed out on a variety of things. And we can't deny that there was impact from industrial action. There always will be. But now we're in a situation where the university finds itself asking those colleagues to do that work. But it wants them to do that work to a high quality and in a very timely fashion, but for only 33% of the pay. So it's saying you must now do this work that you withdrew, but we'll only pay you a very fractional amount of this. And you must suffer quite large punitive deductions in a lot of cases. And if we look at the deductions, they could be incredibly large. The marking and assessment boycott lasted for a total of 20 weeks. And at the moment, the most the university will deduct is 50%. We managed to roll back the 100% through negotiations with the university. And now any colleague may face up to 50% of deductions for 20 weeks, and some will. And that means 10 weeks of full loss of pay. And for some colleagues, that could be £10,000. And the university is saying, well, you still need to do this work, any outstanding work, but we will keep £7,000 and you can have £3,000 back. And it could enter into time-limited deductions where no colleagues faced such significant losses as to be life-altering for many of them. There is a risk to industrial action, but that risk shouldn't be such that the employer seeks to punitively punish employees and yet demand the work be done. It would be very different if it wasn't making any demands of the work being done, but it is. It now wants the work, but it wants the work at a very reduced rate. And I think that illustrates some of the worst elements of neoliberalism in education. We shouldn't be in that situation. So personally, I've lost 56 days of income so far for the MAB for refusing to mark 22 scripts. And some further deductions would be made, although can't be made because of annual leave that I took, but my deductions could run higher than 56 days. And the university is saying, well, you can only have 33% of that back. And it makes no sense to treat its staff in this way against the backdrop of where deals have been reached at other institutions. And it's not like this money will go to compensating anybody. It will go into funds that support a hardship fund for students. I mean, that boon will be incredible. £1.5 to £2.5 million may be very well served supporting those students, but they are not students largely that have been impacted by this current action in any meaningful way. They aren't the staff that picked up the workload, and for no reason, nobody was compelled to pick up workload of any colleague during this industrial action. The unions play an important part in the university, and it's rare that we'll ever have that discussion, and it's rare that we'll ever have that debate, but it costs about 1% of an employee's income to be a member of a trade union. and recognise trade unions are the only body that negotiate for employees on pay, on conditions, and on pensions. And we've won on pensions. We were told up to 6 months ago, we were delusional to think that we would see a return in our pensions. And now our pensions are going to be restored to some degree at better rates than they were before they were withdrawn or attempted to be withdrawn from us. That illustrates why industrial action is important. But the union doesn't just take industrial action. What we do is we engage for the benefit of employees across the institution, and we've been commended for our input into negotiations and consultations locally. We've fed into a variety of working groups, if that's the timetabling project or P&DR projects or a variety of other projects that the university engages in, where we've been able to bring staff voice. And we've been told the voice we bring is often new and different and welcome. And that is incredibly important. There is suitable recognition across the university of the importance of trade unions. However, we are being told that the university won't speak to us now. It won't negotiate with us further on the proposals that it's made to end the marking and assessment boycott. Now, as a union that represents its membership, we can never really withdraw from negotiations. We can accept that they've been closed, that we can make no further movement forward. We can even make a reasoned argument for why that might be. We can explain to our members why they and why we refused the deal of a 33% return. There are very clear reasons and rationale for that, largely about the significant loss of income, life-changing significant loss of income for some of our members. And none of our members should be affected in that way. On average, people were on the MAB for 13 weeks. It means 6.5 weeks of full loss of pay. On a 33% return, by the calculations we've done, staff will lose 1/12 of their yearly income, one whole month of income, and nobody spends a month marking. And that was the only thing that any staff refused to do. And over this period of time, we continued to deploy all of our responsibilities, with the exception often of marking and marking related activities. So the university has benefited quite significantly from our input over this period of time, but it is using legal, well, a very small number of cases to enact deductions which are wildly disproportionate to the labour withdrawn. I think anyone taking industrial action can accept some withdrawal of labour, but it must be in a suitable proportion to the labour withdrawn, and currently it is wildly inaccurate to that. And we would hope that the university will come back to the table, that we wouldn't be forced to take action to try and win a better restitution locally, in line with deals that have been negotiated at other institutions. The fact that some institutions haven't reached a deal is by the by. The important thing is, where there have been negotiations between the university and a union, a deal has been reached that suitably recognises the importance of those employees being suitably remunerated for the work that they do, and to be motivated to do that work to a high quality. There is an important element here. We will continue to be employees of the university. We will continue to ensure that the university is successful by feeding in to the university in a productive and proactive way. But to continue to do that in a suitably motivated way, we must be remunerated. And if the university came to us and said, well, look, here's how we're using this income we've withdrawn for you for these benefits, for these people that have been impacted, that might be a compelling argument, but it hasn't made that argument at the moment. And we are always open to go back into negotiation with the university. It needs to let us know when those negotiations are going to happen. And the debate around the deductions and around the MAB and around higher education funding models, we are prepared to have them. We have reached out to the university on a number of occasions to say we recognise there's a declining income base to the university. Let's campaign together as a union, as a university, and even with local political figures for a better outcome for universities, so we can sustain ourselves with a suitable income base that recognises the important part we play. And a union will be there to fight for our members, to ensure that their rights are respected, but to ensure that the debate is broad and includes a number of voices. And we feel that isn't happening at the moment. We're not having the types of conversations that should occur. And we want to reach a resolution, but a resolution that respects the reality of the situation we find ourselves in. Not one where there's an exercise of power one way or the other, but one where we can reach a reasoned consensus on how we move forward that collectively recognises the impact, but on all parties here. but it must be done in a way that respects everybody suitably, including employees. So it is with regret that we enter into a period of 9 days of strike action, but that is our only mechanism by which we can force the type of conversation we have with the university so that we can find a suitable resolution to the marking assessment boycott. So, colleagues, I hope you'll join us on the picket lines, and I hope you'll show the university that we'll not sit by and see such punitive deductions to our colleagues. And I'm sorry it's come to this. But in solidarity, I hope to see you and support you as we continue to work proactively for a better university. Thank you.